whilst I'm waiting. If I'm live, that is. God. Let me check. Alright, I take it. I am live. Un momento. Let me just share this. What? Come on. Alright, there it is. I'm just gonna share that. Un momento, por favor. Almost done. I take it, I press that, and we are live. Alright. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا وحوانيين لايت خوش آمدید بخیر راغله and people swagatam Solomon, alright, que te cuentas amigo, que te cuentas, what's going on? Tehran, Esmat, Sami saying what up people, Talib G, ahlan wa sahlan. Can I get an ijazah now? Imran Khan has watched all of my Monday nights. A special ijazah going out to you, Imran Khan. Right, Shireen, Atiq, ahlan wa sahlan. Atiq, Allah has blessed me with a baby boy. What shall I name him? Atiq ur-Rahman. There's so many names to choose from. Nafiz, all the way from Singapore, ahlan wa sahlan. And Billy is in the house. Alright, Sid, how you doing, man? We've got Nadir Khan saying, salam, bro, for the first time I'm watching. Well, you have my condolences. Sid, doing it. Is that right? Kaise ho? Bas, masti mein, jhoom rahe yahan pe. Chillin'. Name him Bilal. Alright, Billy said name the boy Bilal. Obviously just the first name, not the surname. We don't want... in case he names him Bilal Riley. Well, and then things could get... Well, how are the speakers? Oh, Harris... Shukran. Muchas gracias. Dearly appreciated. Why is the camera... It just is. Heard a lot about you, Sheikh. Good and bad. Well, the good I can't vouch for. The good, I mean, I don't know. The good I would take with a pinch of salt. That's what I'd say. Amen to that, people. Amen to that. Oh, Mu'adh is in the house. Alright, Mu'adh. What's going on, people? Let's deal with some of your questions. I wanted 1-2 weeks where I'm kind of really taking the questions that people are throwing, because for a few weeks on end, people were saying that how come I'm not reading a lot of the questions. So I wanted to do that. Where do you find the resolve to hold on to interpretations in a world with... You know, I don't know what it is, but Facebook, for some reason, doesn't allow me to open up the comments beyond what I see, and I see just about 2 lines. فَمِنْهُنَّ مَنْ يُلْقَى كَصَابٍ وَعَلْقَمِ وَمِنْهُنَّ مِثْلُ الزَّبْدِ قَدْ شَيَّبَ بِالطَّرَمِ. Allah, Ibrahim Amir is asking me to what does this mean? Old Jahiliyyah poetry. No, I'd have to see the whole context, but I'm assuming when he's saying minhunna, which is a plural, it could be referring to women, but I don't think that's what he's referring to. I think is he referring to weaponry like swords and things like that, and that it melts and things like this. This is what I'm thinking he's talking about, but once again, to have to see the whole context. Right, if Muslims start to study our deen, where should they start? That's a good question. Let's begin with that, Ayub. Right, because a few people have asked me. Beenam Khan has jumped on saying, can you please explain the 73 virgins? Nothing like a question like that to completely distract us mentally. Now, everybody's just picturing 73. I don't know how we picture 73, by the way, but we're just picturing virgins and an oasis and Beenam there to distract our train of thought right from the onset. Is hijacking our train of thought right there. So all we've got on our mind right now. Well, I read somewhere it says that the average man thinks about the holy deed every 11 seconds. Is that about right? Oh, there it is again, 11 seconds. I should keep like a counter. It's like... So, what were we talking about? Ilyas is saying, I honestly don't want any virgins. Ah, that's it. Ilyas is all about the experience. It's all about how many years of experience do you have. The expertise. It's all about the finesse, huh? That's what it's about. All right. Amen to that, Ilyas. Amen to that. Right, so, go on then, let's tackle this virgins question first, because this is now obviously preoccupying the minds of all the men that are on this live stream, and any that shall hear this shall not be able to sit straight. Everybody's kind of just fidgeting and, oh God. Right, so, right, somebody said, are you going to respond to the latest video by Gangu Teli? Well, I'm not sure he did a latest video, but I'll come to that. Abu Layth, are you married? Oh, many a times. Right, somebody trying to track me down and just and get the I like my wine. All right, let's get on to this virgin question, people. So many people all worked up. Right, first of all, there is no mention of 73. This 72, actually I'd heard 72 to be fair. But maybe 73 people say. There is no such mention of this number anywhere. Right? To start off with, let's just get that out there. This number, I don't know. I think it comes in some fabricated or extremely weak hadith maybe, and for some reason people have just circulated it, and it's become one of those, like an old wives' tale like that. It's just become so that everybody says 73 or 72, and 73 is the sects, not to be mixed with sex. Which is what this topic is about. This topic is not about the sects, which is to do with hatred. This is to do with love. Hate, love. So the question is, this 72 or 73, whatever it is, this number is inauthentic. Let's just put that out there. There's no such thing, people, about this 72, 73. However, there is mention. So that's the bad news, people, right? What about the good news? Mufti, can I be your second? Can I be your second one? Yeah, scandal. I can't handle the scandal. Then this guy. People can't handle me. This is the thing, you see. This insanity, this level of craziness, this loco that is required to survive in this world. So people, the pink tea, by the way, you can't really see it the way it's with the camera, and I can't, if I tilt it, that'll just be like a retarded moment. Hey people, pink tea. And it's just spilled all over myself. Right, so now, right, so the number, the bad news, I don't know if it's bad news, but the fake news, people, is the 72, the 70 odd virgins. This number is fake news. Let me do one of those Trump poses. That's fake news, people. Right, the other news is there is mention of women. There is, don't worry, people. there is mention of women, and amongst them, what is mentioned is virgins in the Quran, as in it gives that abkar, and it gives this kind of understanding of modesty and stuff like this. This is intimated in certain verses of the Quran. So that is this. So there is and there are certain riwayat, once again not so sahih, but that speak about sex in paradise, and will there be sex, and it will be so, what's the word? what's the, how can we translate the Arabic word that it says, that they ask in this, but this hadith isn't so sahih, but it says that anata'u wa nahnu fil jannah, will we be having sex in paradise? And it says dahman, you know, like hell yeah, like with great passion and force and rigor, and that's the kind of connotations of this hadith, which is not that sahih, but quoted once again in many literature and texts, and the imagination is like now going but people, so these things are mentioned, but at this stage, right, most of the men now are not listening to anything else I'm saying. They're just kind of like and they just what other channels are on at this time? That's enough of Mufti Abu Layth. What other channels are on? Let me just let me have a bit of me time. But right, people, so that's enough, right? That's enough of all this. But I've said before, I do think that, look, in all honesty, I feel, this is my understanding, that, so this is now it's the time to come back down, right? So I kind of feel that all this imagery and stuff that's in the Quran and about the afterlife, is really, in my understanding, kind of symbolic, and it was there to create a sense of allure especially for the first recipients of the Quran, and by extension other people. But it focused on those it was revealed amongst first and foremost. So that was the kind of Arabian Peninsula and their understanding. Although certain aspects resonate throughout humanity, like I suppose the sexual part, everybody can relate to. But the other part we might not be able to relate to. Like, so rivers of milk, for example, doesn't really mean anything for many people today. I mean, if I said this was a river of milk, you're not going to go mad and jump in a river of milk. Some people may, but I think, or if I said this is a river of honey or of alcohol even, I mean, maybe some people may, but what I'm trying to say, the concept of dhillan dhalila, that they will be shade. You see, like, if you lived in a, I don't know, let's say you lived in Alaska or somewhere very cold, presumably, I don't know if, presumably Alaska's cold, or Greenland, or let's say you lived somewhere quite cold in the northern hemisphere. Telling you that there's going to be shade in paradise may not really be a although you can understand the concept, but it may not be something that you naturally, it resonates with you, because you want heat. So, but if you lived in a desert, now a cool breeze or shade is very soothing. So I think this is the direct and primary objective of this kind of imagery and illustrative description of paradise in the Quran. So in my understanding, these things are symbolic, that we can't comprehend what that is even. It's just totally incomprehensible. And therefore, there's a certain symbolism has been given about pleasure and stuff like this. And that's in my understanding. Okay, so somebody's asking the silver bracelet. My silver bracelet is right over there on my desk. Right, so now that's my understanding. Some people can take it literally. They're more than welcome to do so, but I mean, I feel it's more, and there's a distinction between, there's different kinds of metaphor. Symbolism is a kind of metaphor, and I explained this in last week's show, that you will get certain very low-level metaphors which are just direct substitutes. And symbolism is more about abstract ideas. So, for example, certain thing representing the concept of freedom. Now, the concept of freedom can't really be given just a simple metaphor. It can be given symbolism. Maybe people see certain things like, I don't know, like let's say, like you get sometimes a picturesque kind of recording of a horse running, a white horse or a white dove, and these things are sometimes symbolic of freedom. Now things like that, so you get a form of symbolism, which is things or imagery that is giving, that implies greater, more complicated and abstract ideas. Right, so that's in my understanding. And the same thing with hell, and I've said this in last week's show as well and before. And it's interesting actually, look, because when you dig deeper, it's interesting because words like, for example, firdaus, coming from the Greek kind of paradise and coming from, faradis is the plural of firdaus and paradise. But also things like Jahannam. See, Jahannam is an interesting word. I don't know if anybody's actually researched Jahannam. I know we normally want nothing to do with Jahannam. Like, yaar, I ain't gonna research you. Just in case, I appear to be too fond of you. But no, on a serious note, what Jahannam is interesting. Etymologically speaking, the term. Because Jahannam is an Arabicized word. The word in essence was not an Arabic word. Okay. Now, it comes from where you have the Greek and the Hebrew for it, which is Gehenna or Gehenna. Okay. Now, Gehenna or Gehennom, as you find in the New Testament, in the Bible, is mentioned, and Jesus does mention Gehenna. Okay. Now, it's interesting because it refers, Ge here is referring to the valley of the Hinnom people, who were from the kind of Israelites, and part of, they'd kind of gone strayed and fallen into superstition, and this was, I believe it was south to Jerusalem. I believe it was part of the kind of Judah kingdom, but it was south to Jerusalem, I believe, and there was a valley where these people, the Hinnom people, who were part of the Israelites, greater, the whole Israelite kind of kingdom, they had fallen victims to deep and evil superstitions, and part of which they would sacrifice their children. So they would they would actually kill their children as an offering to this god that they were trying to please. And it wasn't Yahweh, it wasn't God as in God, but they'd, part of their practices, they had deviated, they'd started to worship another god that would favor them. Now, this god, they would, as a sacrifice, they would burn their youngs, or some of their young, alive. So they would burn them, the children, in this valley of the Hinnom people. Now, this became known, so this was this dark, historic, evil, kind of really tragic past to this place, Gehenna. And then there's other traditions that state that what happened after that is that this fire they would keep this fire alight, and then people would use, after these people had kind of dissipated, because of the tragic past that this place had, nobody really wanted to inhabit the Hinnom, Gehenna, place where they had this fire and this burning and this trash. So people would chuck their trash there, they would bring carcasses, and other kind of traditions mention things like this, although that's been disputed whether people did used to burn their carcasses there, and dead animals and trash and garbage. And this fire would, that's what this place was used for. It had stench, it was filthy, it was disease-ridden almost. It was a horrible place to be in. And so what happens is Jesus, in the New Testament, says that people that commit certain atrocities, that God has preserved for them a place in Gehenna, or Gehinnom, this despicable, this kind of almost disease-ridden allotment that is consumed by fire and filth and pus and all this kind of trash and garbage. And so this place, Jesus gives a kind of he makes reference, a very graphic, illustrative kind of description, in saying that those who have transgressed atrociously against the Lord, against the Father, that there will be a place for them in Gehenna, or Gehinnom, that this fire of Gehinnom. Now it's interesting that this then is brought up in the Islamic, in our tradition. So, but that's the place. I mean, so prior to the Israelites and the Hinnom people, there was no, this is what Jahannam, Gehenna, is referring to. So it's interesting that even the term in itself is arguably it's definitely metaphoric or symbolic of a greater kind of like misery and a horrible place. That's what it's kind of denoting. So I hope that gives some. I wanted to share that because I find that just amazing, just mind-blowing in many ways to think about that. Right, so what's going on, people? What are the... Right, I'd been asked a question. So that's... I'd been asked a question on what do I recommend for people wanting to study, wanting to learn. What's my advice for them? So what I would say is that, look, I think first of all, it is amazing anybody wanting to study the sciences of Islam. All right, the man, the myth, from my daughter, Layla, Dad, the legend. Right, so the thing is that I would encourage anybody and everybody that has an interest to study the Islamic sciences. They are really amazing once you get into them, and it's amazing if you can relate that to our current context. I want to just spend a few minutes explaining this. Right, that first of all, I just want to touch up on the importance of this. I'll mention what as a strategy, what you can do, and then also the key objectives. So the importance of this, people, is that it really is the only way to truly be able to reconnect to our legacy, to this tradition, to this deen of al-Islam, and to understand it in our day and age. Because I feel that we are in a time where really it's the clergy have kind of in many ways failed us. Okay, we are failed by the kind of institutions, and I don't think institutionalized religion is going to rescue us. We need to kind of dive into this amazing, majestic tradition of ours and really go to the core. And we need to, at the core, we will find the heartbeat and the pulse of this deen in the Quran, in the authentic sunnah, in this tradition that teaches us, that allows us to reconnect in a natural way, in the way of the fitrah, okay, which is the natural order of things, not a kind of organized or institutionalized version of religion that is actually quite cataclysmic in my understanding. Right, so okay, so that's the important. What do I advise people? I advise people, first of all, look, listen, you need to learn Arabic, okay? Arabic is key for studying Islam, because the Quran is in Arabic, the Sunnah is in Arabic, the tradition, this whole tradition is really in Arabic. And also, people, buried away in the cobwebs of censorship, at the heart of our tradition lie many gems which are in Arabic. But we have to unearth them. And people are not going to do it for us. Okay? Right? People are not going to really allow us to, like, people who have too much at stake, even the institutionalized clergy has too much at stake to encourage people to unearth censored material within Islam, because because it's quite simple, really. It's all about power positions. You would not want to do something that compromises the very position and the power structure that you are a part of. That doesn't that's logic, people. Okay, so Arabic is essential, and it is not difficult. So the good news is that it's not difficult to learn. It is an amazing and beautiful language. Honestly, it's something that you will be so glad that you learnt. It will reconnect you with this deen. There's almost 30 Arabic-speaking countries in the world, people. I mean, just look at if not anything, just look at it as a fun enterprise in which you can tourism, you can travel, you can meet new people, you can, like, just look at how many, your life will change, people. I mean this when I say that. Your life will change. It will give you it will enhance your IQ. I do passionately believe that learning a language enhances your cognitive and perceptive faculties. I mean, there's psychological research to support that. The Sapir-Whorfian hypothesis and the research they've done demonstrated how the language you speak impacts your perception of the world. There's been a lot of research done on that. Do you look at things from what angle, and the participant? And that's an interesting study if you want to take some time out and look at that. They looked at participants that were spoke one language and bilingual, and they took I believe it was Chinese and American participants, English speaking, and they administered tests. And when the tests were done in English, participants by far and large kind of scored in a particular way, but when they were administered in Chinese, they scored in another way. But this could have been and to remove the confounding variable of cultural of enculturation, that it could be a socialized element of perception. What they did is they found a kind of control group with bilingual participants who could speak English and Chinese, and administered the same tests to them, but at different times in different languages. And when they were administered the same test in English, they scored like the English speaking, but when given in Chinese, they scored like the Chinese speaking people, which demonstrated, and the tests were to do with how you saw universals and particulars and what feels odd out in this particular place, and if you had to group 4 of these 6 objects together, which 4 would you group and why? And so your perception of the world was being impacted by the language that you speak. And this is amazing. I'm not sure, I feel it taps into what people like Wittgenstein had said, you know, almost 100 years ago, that he felt that thought was in language, that we thought in language. That's interesting. I'm not exactly, I'm not 100% sure that we do think in language, although I think language is definitely an integral part of thought. So I think the deeper your language is developed, the more intricate your thought processes can become. I definitely feel there is a connection. Right, so okay, so that's language. People, you're going to love it. Look, all I'm saying is you're going to love it. I would advise some practical steps. Okay, I'd advise you can, a book I've always recommended is Dr. Surti's Quranic Arabic. Dr. Surti, an amazing individual, who has a book which, it's, I love the book, okay. The book is designed that it kind of has a graded process by which you will gradually start to, with each exercise or with each unit, understand and comprehend so much of the Quran, and that increasingly develops as you move through the book. So I think that's an amazing book of his. I recommend it to everybody. It's one of the first books I studied, and I taught it for many years on end afterwards. I taught it in schools, I taught it in colleges. When I taught it privately. But in addition to that, there is other material out there. I've heard many great things about Ustad Noman Ali Khan's Bayyina course. I mean, enroll on that, people. There's a distant learning course. It's tried and tested. Many people have done it. There's many apps you can download on your phone and just get through them. In fact, I'm going through one in Spanish. It's actually I'm enjoying it. Let me just see what the app is called. This one's called Busu. Strange name, but B-U-S-W. So Busu, not as in a W, but as in U-U, a double U. So, but I mean, I believe they've got an option to learn Arabic there. But there's so many things. You can watch TV in Arabic, you can watch movies in Arabic, you can watch TV series. Just get on there. In 6 months, you will be good. A year, you're rocking. That's what I'm talking about. So that's the move to California. Alright. Yeah, my Spanish would shoot through the roof if I'm thinking I need to at some point take some time and explore Latin America. Just go. But then I'm thinking I've watched too many of these series with this. There's so many. All you think is like cartels and you're going to be tortured somewhere. You're like taking out your fingernails and you're like, I didn't quite order a manicure, but oh, you're going to cut that. You know, I could do with that finger, to be honest with you. Believe me, that finger it comes quite useful. So I mean, so this, what I was saying is the Arabic is key. Alongside the Arabic, people, you can study fiqh. There's a lot of courses out there. Fiqh is your understanding of this deen. Okay, you can start off at a very elementary level. It's going to teach you the 5 pillars of Islam. It will expand to a more a beginner, intermediate level. It will go into other transactions. It will go into intermediate level. They will mention the different schools of thought, the different opinions. Now, a lot of these things, admittedly, some of the things may be archaic and therefore irrelevant and immaterial, but it still gives you a connection. The element of worship is definitely something that you will get. There's many books now in English, in fiqh. There's many courses going on. There's 4 popular madhabs. I say 4 generously. I'm letting the Hanbalis in. Should we give that finger for the Hanbalis? the small finger, it's like. So, well, you've got, look. So, I mean, the madhabs are there. You've got the 4 kind of major schools, beginning with the Don and the legendary school of Medina, people. Imam Malik's madhab, which really, need I say more? It really just stops there. That's but nevertheless, we'll include the others to let them feel better. So you got the Hanafi madhab, you got the Shafi'i and the Hanbali, and you can basically just find some text. You can find some teachers. There's a lot of stuff online. There's there's courses going on. If you want to learn the School of Medina, I've got some lectures on YouTube called The School of Medina in the 21st Century. That's a good lecture to listen to. It gives the background, the backdrop to Imam Malik, what his madhab is built on, and why it's relevant for the 21st century. There's I've got how to pray on YouTube, a video demonstrating the salah. That's according to the School of Medina. That will cover the basics. I've got a very basic course just covering some pillars of Islam called the Ashmawiyah. This is in the Maliki madhab, and you don't need to listen to mine. You can just go get hold of the Ashmawiyah, and many people have done commentaries on it. Some people use another parallel called the Akhdari, which is more often in like Northwest Africa. Ashmawiyah is more so in Northeast Africa. They tend to use, and then after that there's other, you can move up the scale. There's some people study, a book I've taught is Foundations of Islam. That's the Pillars of Islam by Qadi Iyad, who was the legendary Maliki scholar from Muslim Spain. I have that in 20 lectures on YouTube. You can audio lectures, you can listen to that. But other people might teach something else at this stage. They might teach something like the Talqeen of Qadi Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi. I am thinking, inshallah, to resume teaching fiqh, and I will probably be teaching the Talqeen. So that's but people have already taught that out there. Some people move on to the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani. He was known as Young Malik. This is in Maliki fiqh. I'm giving the kind of like a syllabus, if you like. People study this is really an intermediate, and depending on the commentaries, can be touching into advanced as well. So people cover these, and then there's in the Maliki fiqh, and some people might study a book called Aqrabul Masalik, which is by Dardir. You can check out, by the way, Aisha Bewley's website. Aisha Bewley, she's part of the Maliki community within the UK, who's translated and contributed significantly to Maliki works and the legacy in the English language. Abdul Haq Bewley and her husband and that whole community, really, in Norwich, they have done a lot. But on her website, she has a lot of works translated. So she has the Risala and a commentary in English. So you could see these. So some people do teach at this stage, like I said as well, the Aqrabul Masalik, which is by Dardir. Then you go on to advanced level. At this level, people often teach Mukhtasar Khalil. Although it's a brief text, but it's really kind of enigmatic almost. It's like written in code almost. Some people teach the Jami' al-Ummahat of Ibn al-Hajib, which is also called the Mukhtasar al-Far'i. This is within the Maliki madhab. And these come with commentaries, and if it's the Jami' al-Ummahat, then Khalil himself has a commentary on that known as Tawdih. But people that are teaching the Mukhtasar of Khalil. There's so many commentaries that you can go through. Hattab is a very popular one, loved by so many people, known as the book is termed Muwahibul Jalil. So this is within the Maliki kind of, but these are people, you don't need to do all of that kind of straight away. This is just a structure for life. You're just kind of moving along, okay? You're just kind of studying, you're getting the basics out the way, you're moving on to intermediate discourse, you're learning. There's in the other madhabs, they have similar kind of their own work. So you'll have in the Hanafi madhab, they will begin with books like Nur al-Idah. They will probably, I mean, I'm just rushing through it, that's at an elementary level. They will probably move on to Quduri, and then advanced texts like Hidayah, as an example, by Marghanani. And then they have very detailed fatwa texts like other madhabs as well. Okay, that's right. So now, and so the reason I'm mentioning these things is just to kind of give you an example. But right now, you can just begin on the foundational level. If it's Maliki, you can look for anything very simple from those. I gave a few. If it's Shafi'i, if it's Hanafi, you could look for Nur al-Idah. If it's Shafi'i, maybe Matn Abi Shuja' or something. You can look for something very basic and go through them. There's a lot of teachers. There's courses by Seekers Hub, I believe, that are free. They're available online. But there's a lot out there. Just start reconnecting. And the amazing thing about the internet, people, is that you can just start learning and you can start constructing knowledge. Okay. And yes, it is true that these books severely need updating. They need to be resynced with our day and age. But if you get the basics out the way, you kind of start to see, okay, how were those people thinking? And then we can start to work. Well, the worship part, it's going to be very similar anyway on wudu and stuff. Some parts won't, but many parts will still be similar. So that's fine. You can look into usul, which is the underlying legal theory. These are just, this is just some advice I'm just sharing with people that may want to reconnect, and something that, look, I would advise you people. I would advise you is that start learning about people. Right. Start learning about people, because once you start to read about people in the past, it starts to come to life for you. Who was this scholar? Who were his teachers? Oh, what was an interesting incident? What were they caught up in? Oh, what was this controversy that happened here? Oh, what was this? You know, just read up different people. It's amazing how we as humans can construct knowledge. We can be, honestly, it's amazing. Sometimes I get distracted, people, and I'll be kind of sitting there, and I'll be, oh, what's that? You know, curiosity. I've got like a manic, curious mind sometimes, if I allow it. And what will happen is I will be doing something and I'll think, what's that? And before I know it, I'm researching this word and this concept, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what's that? And then I've got into this, oh, who did this? And oh, so who thought, oh, so who challenged this? And oh, well, what's that about? Oh, what's this video? What's that? 4 hours later, people. Then 6 hours later, I'm like an expert on that. It's like now I just know so much about something so useless. I just don't know where. It's like I feel I need to share that knowledge now. I'll probably just know something like, oh, really? Something really odd, but just know so much about it now. And you're kind of thinking, well, I just don't know what to do with this knowledge now. So, is that how movies began? I mean, was that the, oh, wow. Right. So this is the kind of things that that I get up to in my spare time, researching all this stuff. But what I meant is, it's an amazing way to construct knowledge. And we really, and I want to say something here. People had asked me as well about the madrasa system and about the I want to extend this into the general schooling system as a whole, people. Our schooling system today has failed, and it is failing us, okay? And I mean by that this broader, the secular, the general system of education we have today is not going to take us through. I'm being honest with this. Because what I'm trying to say is the system that got us here is not going to be enough to get us there where we need to go. Let me explain myself. And the madrasa system is definitely a part of this. It's a weaker part, in fact, of this whole secular, of the educational system as a whole. You see, our educational system is constructed, it's premised on the idea of offloading a huge amount of information, right, to the students. Now, you've got to understand why, the kind of theory behind this, okay? The theory behind this is, this educational system is over a century old. Now, when you go back to, let's say we're looking 100 years ago, right, or early 1900s, information was so scarce. You couldn't find information like you do today. In fact, just think about this, people. I want you to think about something. Bear with me here. Think of this. Let's go back 100, 200 years. Right. If you today are a person who is reading, let's say who reads the newspapers, whether it's online or the actual papers. Let's say you are somebody that does that. So you read newspapers and you are reasonably active on social media. So you read things, Facebook, you know, you see all these adverts and things and news, and so you're somebody who does this. Let's go with that hypothesis. You will, if you read newspapers today, or you go through that kind of information in a newspaper on a daily basis and more on social media, you will have perhaps potentially been through more information in a week, yeah, than somebody 100 to 200 years ago that would go through in their entire lifetime. Like as in being exposed to, I mean. Right, so just think about that. That you would be exposed to more information if you're going through like a whole newspaper, not just a pathetic newspaper, an actual newspaper a day for a week, or that equivalent online if you're reading certain subscriptions and you're reading certain things and going through social media and seeing this incident and that news and BBC and CNN and all this and YouTube's suggestions, and you will have been exposed to potentially more information than somebody, let's say 1 or 2 centuries ago, throughout their entire lives. Now that is something, wow. Now imagine living in their age, information was unavailable. So what schools did was they were built on this notion of let's just flood as much information as we can into these young people. Because books were not available. And there was censorship. Even public speaking in many parts of the world was prohibited. Now, and people, where else would they get this information from? So they would get it from school. So they go to school and they're being told this is in geography, this is in maths, this is in this is in this is in this, this is literature, this is this. Because that's the only place they could get it. I mean, outside they could only probably access religious information. Now, you see, now we live in 2018. Now let's fast forward. We live in a totally different world, people. Information, there is an overload. We are drowning in information. We are in the information age. There is too much information. So, flooding kids with information at school is useless. Because a child or a young person or any person has more access to information here than any human being could possess in front of him. So you can bring me the most intelligent person and I have access to more information in the palm of my hand than a dozen of those people put together. I mean, they may have expertise and skills, but I can outdo them with information. What we need, people, we need the shift to change from information deliverance to critical thinking. We need the focus to be on critical thought. How do we teach children or young people to reason, to refine? We are in an age, people, we are in an age of fake news. There is so much information that is fake. This has been unprecedented. Human beings have been exposed to propaganda, but there has never been this much fake information readily available, ever. How do you filter through? How do you sift through fake, legit? How do you come to conclusions? How do we evaluate? How do I synthesize between different research or ideas and bring them together? How do I co-create these a new perspective? So this is what we need, and this is a great need for education as a whole. I think secular education is massively failing on this, and I'm going to be honest, I think, this is my thought, I think education that is in schools and institutions, in all honesty, is unfortunately a waste of time. I don't think it really provides people, it doesn't provide them, you know, true, I mean, I understand the fact it's better than not having, but it's so much time is invested and money that it doesn't pay off. It's not a fair trade-off. So it doesn't provide them the jobs that they deserve. It leaves them with just an undue debt, and I believe an oppressive debt. It leaves them just really having amassed a certain amount of information and knowing how to write, let's say, essays and things like this, which in real life isn't what life is about. I mean, unless you're going to become an academic and write journals, you're not going to really be writing essays and doing these things throughout your lives. So this is just quite irrelevant. I mean, I understand there's importance to this, but what I'm trying to say is holistically, it's not a fair trade-off. I'm not against, I'm not anti-essayists or but what I'm trying to say is the trade-off ain't worth it. Whereas if the information is reduced, but our skills to extrapolate are increased, our critical resources are refined and retuned, then we're on to something, people. That is the way forward. So, now that I've said that, the Islamic thing, so that's the secular system, is struggling. Okay, so the secular system is in a drought mode, people. Drought, okay. And that's people with some of the greatest thinkers. But they really need to start thinking, right, we need to change this damn educational system, right, because it's failing. So the secular free-thinking societies that are not bound by certain restrictions necessarily are in drought. That education system, I mean. The Madrassa and the religious educational system is in famine mode. It's not in a drought mode, because this is centuries behind that. This is still operating at maybe the Middle Ages, the medieval times. This is still operating on that. A same approach, lets us flood them with loads of information in a particular book that is irrelevant to life altogether. And worse still is, no, because this is, Izzy is asking, is that being sarcastic? No, it's not, because you see, in the Madrassa system, they're teaching all these books. Okay, in the secular system, they're giving an overload of information which is highly irrelevant. And information is not the need anymore. So they need to start assessing, re-evaluating the needs of our society. The needs are the way to retune the way we think and critical thinking. But these institutions are not averse to critical thinking. They do promote critical thinking, but they don't, it's not the primary focus. These institutions are averse, are anti-critical thought. So they actually condemn. These are what we call, these are confessional modes of teaching. This is dogmatism. Right, so in general. So now what they do, even if they teach you critical thinking, they teach it dogmatically and confessionally. So confessional teaching is when you teach, like the way seminaries and churches teach people. They teach people, but they teach them just dogmatically. So for example, imagine I'm now to teach you a debate. So let's say I say to you, look, people, Allah says in the Quran, you know, إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا رؤوسكم. That now, let's say here, let's take this verse as an example. Yeah. So just to show you what I mean by teaching, by this So here you have different scholars have taken a look at this verse. That famsahu bi ru'usikum. Okay, now this verse, wipe over your heads. Okay, famsahu bi ru'usikum. Now here there is a word be, that wipe over with, or what does this be mean? It's a transitive kind of a particle, but what is it doing? So wipe over. So here some people have said, like the Shafi'i madhab, so I'm teaching you critical thought. This is how it's taught in a madrasa. So they will say, look, let's say the Maliki said, no, you need to wipe over all your head. Okay, because Allah says in another verse that famsahu bi wujuhikum wa aydiyakum ila al-marafiq, when it's to do with tayammum, and there you wipe the whole face, so here you wipe the whole head. Now the Shafi'iyya will say, well, be here means a portion of. So as long as you wipe any part of your head, your hair, so that could, what's the least number of hair to make it plural is 3, generally in the Arabic language, because they have dual as well. So 3 is the least number of plural, literally speaking. So as long as you wipe 3 hair, then your masah has been done. The Hanafiya have said, well, no, as long as you wipe a significant portion, why don't we take that to mean like a portion about that width, which they call the nasiya, which may cover between 1/3 to 1/4 of your head. So that's fine, as long as you've done that. So this is diverse thought. So in the madrasa, they will teach you this diverse thought. So they will say, the Maliki said this, the Shafi'i said this, the Hanafi said this, learn that. Now they will then tell you, okay, we're Hanafis, this is how we do it. Now you can question that, why did they say this? They'll say, well, Maliki said this because of the Tayammum, they said this because of this, they said. But you're not allowed to take this further in any way. So for example, let's say you said, but Sheikh, I think that this ba that is used like this, and imagine you came out with a different theory. Let's just say, like you said, I believe that this really ought to cover 2/3 of the head. This is my understanding, because looking at all of this, I'm just giving an example. You will be either mocked if the teacher's in a good mood, or you'd be reprimanded. Now, who do you think you are? Like, how dare you contribute to this discourse? You are not here to contribute to this discourse. You are here to memorize what these people have said, You can ask why they said it, that's fine. But what you can't do, I mean, you can ask to clarify and to learn better why they've said it. But what you can't do is introduce a new way of looking at things. That is categorically haram in most, I mean, what they won't use, actually they might even use the word haram, but others won't, but it's forbidden. So madrasas are massively averse to free thinking. The reason, and critical thought, the reason they like that is because, one, they're massively insecure, but two, religious institutions tend to do that because they don't, because in order to keep their authority, they feel that people can't be too critical. Because if you start to question things, you'll eventually question them. But in all honesty, it wouldn't really cripple the institution, but they have a fear that it would. And hence, there's such a tradition for 1,000 years of, you know, just dogmatism. So yeah, so this is, we really need to be thinking so out of the box, honestly. The world today, just think about where we've got to, people, where we've got to. I answered in last week's show about, somebody asked me, do you think we're living in a simulation? And I said that I feel it's very plausible that we are living in a simulation. I feel that that is plausible. That I would term it, give it a slightly, a subtitle, that the mind of God. That is, it really simply, are we simply in existence in the mind of God? Is that what reality is? In a very sophisticated and complex way that we can't fathom. Just as if you look into a computer game, I mean, the way these games are becoming more and more complex and 3D and very virtual and realistic, and the characters are doing all these things and they're moving around, and yet I could have a tiny chip the size of, I don't know, I could have a tiny chip, something like this size, yeah? And this is where the game is. This is where everybody is. You see, everybody is on that. And you think, well, where are they? But that's where they are. It's, and they could be a 3D, and they could... Now, imagine these characters somehow gained consciousness. Just imagine. And they gained consciousness. Just for a moment, roll with it. Now, they would assume that everything they're doing is of their choice. But little do they know that they're actually being controlled. But I'm just saying, it's, if they became conscious, they would think that everything they're doing is them. I mean, these are just fascinating thoughts. But I think that, look, if... I'm not saying this is a computer game, but I'm saying in a complicated way, it could be in a very complicated way. It could be. I don't see that in any way anti-Islamic. I think, if anything, it actually answers a lot of Islamic questions in terms of, like, predestination, in terms of evil and suffering, in terms of all of these things seem to give a... they seem to become a lot more explicable in that simulation dynamic. But if we are, let's say reality is a simulation, or whether it isn't, how do we learn about reality? Religion, like the folk of religious folk are not interested in this. Like, they're just like, well, there's, like, basically, if you speak to dogmatists, their view is there's nothing new, there's nothing to learn about this cosmos. There's nothing. And anything we do learn is just simply information. Like, that's a deep sense of arrogance, that we think that we know it all. Why? And this is why atheists really hate on people of dogma like that, who hail from religions, because they have this view that, oh, well, there's nothing, like, I don't want to know, like, there's nothing to learn about this cosmos, or about reality, or about matter. And if we do discover something, it's like, This is not the attitude of the early Muslims. The early Muslims, if you look at the great scientists, the physicians, the philosophers that the Muslim Ummah had, they were very curious. They weren't about, oh, well, we know it all came from God, so there's no point learning about it. It all came from God, and what's the point learning about it? That was not their attitude. Like, look, people, check this out. Like, it takes a certain amount of what... Because what I'm trying to say is it's through critical thought that we're going to refine our thinking process and discover stuff we don't know. Like, just think about that. I mean, people... It took Einstein. Einstein, here's a person who was a nobody. And he reconciled what people for hundreds of years couldn't understand. That why okay, before Newton, people were still struggling with the element of gravity as a concept, but Newton kind of comes up with his, you know, harmonizing that gravity is out there and in here, and harmonizing between the heavens and the earth. But even Newton says, look, I've explained gravity, but I don't know why is gravity there. I don't know why it's there. I've explained these kind of laws of motion and things like this. But along comes Einstein, and, you know, he's not even a part of that discourse, and then he discovers what goes on to be called the law of general relativity and space-time. That actually there's like a fabric, that space-time is an actual fabric, and it's within this fabric of space that mass creates a kind of dent, which around it the other bodies kind of revolve, and this is why you have that gravitational kind of pull and revolution and this nature. Now he changes everything, and speaking of the speed of light and speaking of relativity, and now it's like people thought of these things and then they had these shifts. It's today people are thinking, like, let me tell you something, today there's this whole understanding of how many degrees of reality can we get into. And people generally say that there's 11 degrees of reality that they've kind of got into that work mathematically. And I think if they try beyond that, it starts to collapse and goes into mayhem. Now, what is that even talking about? Now, just think about that. Because, you see, what they're trying to do is unify all these different forces, because you had Einstein come up with this explanation of what he did with gravity, and then you had people like Theodore Kaluza and other people who thought, well, maybe I can do the same thing with electromagnetism, and they come up with a theory that unifies these things. And then there's other forces, the nuclear force and the strong force, the weak force, and people in physics are trying to unify these. And now we've got quantum mechanics, because we've got this world and the quantum world. And is there a way of unifying these? Now, the unfortunate thing is that Muslims are not a part of this discourse at all. When, by and large, because I mean by that from a religious perspective, we almost think like, this is irrelevant. But why is it irrelevant? Because if anything, if we are going to discover reality, it's going to be through this. This is what reality is about. Now, just let me just share with you this thing on the dimension. Just think about this, for example. That, you see, people thought, what if these dimensions are curled up within? Like, so tiny that we can't actually see. We can't actually... I mean, it's so difficult to fathom, but they're right there in front of us. Now, just think about this. Now, because this had me mind blown when I was trying to fathom this. That what on earth is that on about? How do you get other dimensions? How do they even get in? Like, whoa. And how do we think about that? So let me take you on a mental trip, people. Imagine we are 2D objects. Yeah. So we're 2D objects. So here we are. This is really bright, so I don't know if that's showing up very well. But if we... That's not Hitler, people. That's not Hitler. That's a bad example to use. Right, so let's say here's a book, right? So imagine we are 2D objects. That's us. We are like this little text. That's all we are. Right now, imagine that's our world. Like all we can see is up, down, left, right, like that. I mean, just that's it really. Just these. We can move about like that. That's our world in how we can see it. Now imagine somebody put a finger, like I put my finger over there now. You see, from the perspective of these 2D characters, these people there, these letters, imagine these letters are all people. From their perspective, what do you think they will see? I'll tell you what they'll see. They'll see a circle. That circle is my fingertip being kind of pressed against. They will just see that circle. So this whole thing, the hand and all of that, they will not be able to see. They will only see that circle moving around as I move my finger. Because that's the only way they can see. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm saying circle, but you understand what I mean. Like, they'll just see the fingertip, the thing actual pressing, the flat shape moving around. Because from their perspective, that's the world as it is. Like, in our perspective, we can only see the world in 3D. If there are things, entire things connected to these forces that are outside of our dimension, we will not be able to see them. Do you understand? Now, but what we can do is through things like the sciences of physics and mathematics, and we can try to discover if these forces do exist. And one example is like dark matter, dark energy. These things exist. Dark matter exists. What is it? What if it is something hovering above, like another... Like, what I'm trying to say is we wouldn't be able to fathom it because it's not part of this dimension. I mean, sorry, not fathom. We wouldn't be able to see it because it's not part of this dimension. I'm sorry to kind of... I know this may sound a bit wacko, me saying all these things, but what my purpose for saying this stuff is that we need to start rekindling that curiosity for discovery, to learn, to once again become curious with nature. We need to start, like if we don't know something, like look, like I've said this stuff, this is very complicated stuff. You can go onto YouTube, you can watch very simplified videos, but we need to start rekindling this flame within the younger generation. And within Muslims especially. Because we are so, we are cognitively and from a legacy perspective, we are handicapped. I don't mean to kind of put it like across, but we are like on the global scale. You know, it's like people say, you know, well, how many universities does the entire Muslim world have compared to, and how many Nobel Prizes have they won, and how many, you know, like, what's their contribution been in the last 150 years? Whereas our contribution was huge as a Muslim Ummah because we were incredibly curious. So, right, so that's... I think that's some words. I don't know if I got carried away with some of those examples, but I find this stuff so deeply fascinating, and I find it I find the kind of attitude belligerent and arrogant when I come of this. Look, we know it all. Like what is there to know about reality? That's just, and we'll just give it an Islamic term. Quantum. It's just the world of the jinn. That's not how this works, mate. You gotta kind of... That's what I'm talking about. Right, so I hope that made some sense, people. What are some questions? Let's take some questions, man. Let's take some questions, people. As Ghalib would say, Bak raha hoon junoon mein kya kya kuch. Kuch na samjhe khuda kare koi. It'd say that, what nonsense am I just blabbering on in my insanity? God willing that, you know, nobody's understood a word of what I've said. Right, so What's going on, people? What questions? People must have submitted some questions. Let me take some from the pre-submitted questions, people. Un momento, un momento. I am almost there. Right. ماذا يحدث ماذا. Right, okay, wait. What's going... just as I'm... god damn. One thing that technology teaches us as well is, boy, patience. We need patience. Come on. Right, here I am. Huh? No? Where did it go? Yes, salam. Check on this page, people. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring up some of the questions, so... God damn. Right, there it is. Okay, some questions. Let me finally... Why do Mulvis move back and forth when reading the Quran? Are they not imitating the Jews at the Wailing Wall? So what Isa Ali is asking is, when people learn in a madrasa, they go like this. And it is very, it has a, I mean, it's spot on what the Jewish people do at the Wailing Wall. Although I don't think they are imitating the Jewish people. I think many of them may not even know that the Jewish people do this. But I find this I find it quite disturbing. It's a very kind of like a hypnotic trance that they get into to show that they're learning. And it's really weird because, you see, when I did hifth, people, when I memorized the Quran, so I did that in Islamabad, in Pakistan, many years ago, probably about 18 years ago now. So, wow, 18 years ago, people. Bloody hell. Right, so now at that time, you see, in the class, if you were not moving, now I never used to do that, because I used to find it very irritating, but if you were not moving, the teacher would assume that you're not reading. So you would get you'd get a smack on your back. Did I complete my hifz? Yes, I did. I completed my hifz, alhamdulillah. So you'd get a kind of either a slap at the back of your head or a stick to kind of say, read. So the way they knew you were reading is by you kind of humming and going like this. So it's weird because it becomes you know, so it's a kind of reinforced behavior, because it's crazy. I mean, I think it's, if anything, it's irritating. It's preventative from them. I think they could concentrate a lot better if they weren't moving. But I understand it must induce a kind of almost a psychoactive effect, a kind of hypnotic trance at some level of kind of just this rocking and moving at a certain level. And some people used to do it with a proper rhythm. There was one guy who would do like... Honestly, I kid you not, he would kind of go at an angle like this. I used to think, what the hell is he doing? Right, so... are you a student of Sheikh Abdul Razzaq al-Halabi? I did meet Sheikh Abdul Razzaq al-Halabi, and I just read very little to him, if that can be counted as a student, alhamdulillah. But I don't think I was a personal student in that sense. So, but yes, of course, I mean, I did meet him and I did manage to... Right, so, next question. What are the similarities between Imam Malik and Imam al-Awza'i in Madhhab? Abu Unaysa has asked this question. What a kunya! Abu Unaysa. That's a rare... it's a rare kunya, isn't it? Unaysa. Ibrahim Amir. Allahi uhibbuka fillah. Right back at you, man. Right back at you. Absolute love. Likewise. Love you for the sake of Allah too. Right, so Abu Unaysa, what are the similarities? Imam Malik and Imam Awza'i both were known as, they were imams in, in hadith and sunnah. But Imam Awza'i, he was based in Sham, what is probably modern day Lebanon and Syria and that part of the world. But his madhab kind of died out, I suppose, shortly after him. He had some students, but they didn't proliferate the way the other madhabs did. He was an amazing imam, Imam Awza'i. I think a bit stern on some things. Some things amazing, of course. It's said that he debated Imam Abu Hanifa and got really angry and upset with Abu Hanifa and stormed off. And I don't know how true that is. If it is true, I think it's disturbing of his person. It's disturbing in the picture it creates of his personality. But by the way, he passed away, Imam Awza'i, in his hammam, in his kind of sauna. So they used to have these saunas, these kind of heated, a bit like these Turkish baths that you have today. So he was in there, and they used to heat it up, and it would produce this kind of smoke, kind of like, I suppose maybe some element of a smoke, but this intense steam. And so what happened is his wife locked him in. Women, huh? Women. No, she did it by accident, to be fair. She didn't realize he was in there, so his wife kind of locked him in there. And in doing so, she crushed an entire madhab. She destroyed she brought an entire legal system of thought to its knees and crushed it there and then. The power of women. Allah. See what women are capable of if they... So, Imam Awza'i, Bechara, Bechara passed away in that sauna at the hands of his beloved. So, he's like, it's not... He's like, this is not quite the intense, steamy relationship I hoped for. Well, so let's move on. No, he's an amazing person. May Allah have mercy on him, and bless us all to be learned like that. But just to make sure we have like a lock button on the inside of our steam rooms and saunas as well. Amen. Amen. Right, so let's move on. Next question. What is the limit for there is no impulsion? You probably meant compulsion in religion. There is no compulsion in religion. Okay. Surah Namal, the beast that will talk. I've got a whole video, Frabbery. I've got a whole video, it's on YouTube, where I speak about the beast. This description is to do with, as Ibn Ashur says, is to do with the end of time. Sorry, it's to do with the afterlife, and not to do with this world. So, okay. Surah. What is the limit? There is no compulsion in religion, people. You cannot force people, okay, to do things. So just to clarify that. Surah Talaq, Ayah 4. Okay, Wallati. No, because you've written it in Arabic, but it's not connected. Okay. Oh, Wallahi lam yahidna. Okay, right. Is this speaking about the minors, those who have not had their menses? Those women who have not attained. So Allah is explaining what is the iddah. And for those women, it is 3 menstrual cycles. And those who have not yet had, or that's one way of translating it, or those who do not or didn't have menstrual cycles. Now, I've mentioned in my Age of Aisha video as well that if you look at different tafasir, if you look at the tafasir of there's the tafsir of Abu Hayyan and other people who highlight that this is to do with those women who do not have menstruation due to illnesses. Okay, and there are women like that that have not had a cycle on end for years, for example. That does, and I'm not talking about because of the menopause. Women in the right age that are women, but they for some reason do not have. So Allah says that they will have an iddah period of 3 months. That's what it's referring to. It's not referring to minors, although unfortunately, and I say this with a very disappointed and saddened heart, that disappointingly and unfortunately many Muslims have used that verse to say that it's talking about minors and it's talking about girls, and therefore then they've coupled that with the hadith of the Age of Aisha to say that you can marry young girls in Islam, which is categorically wrong. It is haram, and it is not only disgusting, but it is thrown Islam categorically under the bus. And what's so shocking is why, with almost a kind of arrogance, a belligerent arrogance to them, many religious Muslims proudly boast this feature, what they feel is a feature of Islam. Like they say, okay, we won't do it, but yes, the Prophet did it. And you think, well, this, I couldn't, you know, if the shaitan himself tried to harm Islam, he couldn't have done a better job than these people who proudly boast that the Prophet married a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and this is okay in Islam. So this is, and I've spoken about this at length before, so, and I've got a detailed video. I've got a few, but I've got one on the Age of Aisha which you can resort to. Right. For work purpose, quick question. Can you pray your own namaz? Can you pray your own namaz in mosque rather than follow the imam? The actual prayer time start, for example, can you go in and pray and leave? I'm not sure I fully understand that question, Irfan. From what I've understood is you're asking that if you were in a hurry, you've gone into a mosque, the jama'ah hasn't happened, can you just do your prayer and go? The answer is yes, of course you can. Can you please touch on the issue of praying at work? It can be difficult for us living in the West. What are the minimum conditions of prayer? Praying with shoes? Do you need a prayer mat? Can you combine? You need one of those toppies. You need to have like a center parting hairstyle. You need to put all this oil on your hair. You need to stand there. You need to wear that attar. You know when you were kids, they used to have this attar, this kind of red, this toxic, radioactive smell on there that used to be probably like the cheapest attar people used to bring back from Saudi. And if you wore it, you could just never wash it off. It's like you know, people would be like, generously, can I give you some? And you'd put it on and it's like, oh my God, now I just stink of this thing and I can't take it off. And then they're like, you can run, but you can't hide. Right, so basically, no, the good news is, people, none of that is required, thank God. So you don't need to decimate your work environment every day. Look, wait there, you've got more here. Can you pray in the bathroom if you cover the toilet? If you cover the toilet. Otherwise, if you didn't cover it, would your head... It's okay, I'm just doing sujood. Was that the place with... But it's okay, guys, I covered it. And you've knocked yourself out now because you've kind of got the lid on there. You've hit your head on it. And you've got a casualty in the toilet. and they have to break in, and they go, he had this strange hat on his head, and he had this really strange smell. He had this itar, and he was just knocked out. Well, okay, let's read on, so we can cover all the parts of this equation. Obviously, our brother Tutti Hood is having a difficult time at work. Right, what about the minimum wudu requirements? Will tissue and no lota? Those of you who don't know what lota is that kind of like, I don't know, that kind of pot or kettle-like instrument that is used for water to kind of clean your royal behind once you've gone to the toilet, that you see in a lot of these toilets. Muslim toilets, you see it. Or they may have the bidet, the toilet shower. Right, so the point is, what if you don't have a lota and you just have tissue? Minimum prayer requirements when you are rushed for time. There's quite a lot going on. Tutti, in your bathroom at work, there's a hell of a lot going on there. There's like, oh, I'm rushed for time, there's no lota, there's no space, there's no... Right, so what can we do? Look, okay, let's get this clear. People, you can combine prayers to facilitate life for work and things like that. So the prayers you can combine are Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha. So let me just do that kind of like alien parting there. So these two, Dhuhr and Asr, and Maghrib and Isha. See, I feel like one of those aliens from an alien movie. So these two can be combined, and these two can be combined. And so if by delaying Dhuhr till you get home and praying it with Asr, it will make life easier, you can do that. If by bringing Asr forward and praying at lunchtime because it would make life easier, you can do that. Now, if, like in the UK, if it's not of any help, let's say you can combine them, yes, but you still need to do them at work. If you can get a quiet spot, that's excellent. If you can't, the question, can you pray in the bathroom, in the toilet? Well, you can. I mean, it's not that the prayer wouldn't be invalid. Obviously, depends, because not all toilets have been created equally. And not all toilets are used equally. So, I mean, you have certain people, like you may, you know, what can I say? Okay, the aiming expertise is a hot topic of discussion, often known to the male species. You see, this aiming can be, you know, getting the aim right can be a big problem, you know. All the men on here will probably know what's going on there. They're probably like some words of wisdom, that is. So, I like this guy. But the aiming can be a problem, so you might have a lot of people, they've kind of decorated around the toilet bowl. So obviously, that's something you don't want to be doing sujood on. You kind of get up and... You go, you want the good news or the bad news? You go, well, the good news is I've done my salah. The bad news is I've quite interestingly managed to contract several urinary infections in my eyes and in my nose. I mean, it was quite an experience, I'll tell you. So that's not what you want to do. So, but yes, you can pray in a toilet. That's not the salah is acceptable anyway if the place is clean. Okay, so that's just to make that clear. I would say that, you see, if you can get a quiet place to pray somewhere, alhamdulillah, that's excellent. You can maybe, I don't know, you have to assess wherever it is that you're praying. I don't know your environment. As far as doing wudu is concerned, yes, I would say that you can go with the fatwa of many scholars saying, look, you can wipe over socks, fine, if it'll create ease. if you are struggling to do wudu in a place, I feel that in those circumstances it is permissible for you to do tayammum. Tayammum is just with a stone. So if, let's say, if this is a stone, right? So you can't really, if I put that there, it's going to definitely fall. I'm trying to see if I've got okay, we're going to have to go with this. No, you still can't see it, right? Okay, no, you can't see it. Okay, so this is the stone, people. I'm going to have to just use any object. Phone, put it there. Now, all you do is you just tap it or just rub your hands, rub your hands on it. That's not to be cut out and edited and to be misconstrued. And you're in a disciplinary hearing at work. And you're like, well, but Mufti Abu Layth said, just rub your hands on. I'm talking about the stone, goddammit. Focus, focus, people, focus. Right, so you can rub your hands on it or tap it, the stone, right? And then, so you can wipe over your face. That's it. Tap on it again. And then you just wipe over the forearms like that. Job done. That is tayammum, people. Tayammum works the same for ghusl or wudu. And it is and that is a substitute for ghusl or wudu. For ghusl, if time was running out, or if there was no water, or if you were ill, or wudu. And there is, can a gemstone be used? That is such an interesting question, Saliha Khanum. I don't actually know so much about gemstones. Any natural, unless is it? I was gonna say. Okay, let's see. People. Okay, Google. Are gemstones natural? Synthetic gemstones are physically identical to their natural gemstone counterparts that are mined from the earth. They have the same physical properties and chemical composition as naturally occurring gemstones. Technology. Gotta love it, people. Right, so... right, mind you, the other day, I was with a friend, we were coming back, and I said... I'm not going to say exactly the whole dialogue, but I said, okay, and I asked for instructions. I said, what's the postcode? Give me directions to... And it came up with something not directions, it just came up with something which I can't say. Anyway, so that's when Google goes totally wrong. But, so gemstones that are natural, yes, you can do tayammum on them. You can do tayammum on stones, pebbles, sand, earth, anything natural of the earth, connected to the earth. Mainly, I mean, that's the agreed upon, general, broadly agreed upon. Some people disagree, but broadly agreed upon. And then some people have gone to other extents of saying even trees and wood. But that most people didn't accept stuff like that, but they accepted all earth, stones, pebbles, clay, that kind of stuff. Okay, so now, so in my understanding, that if it was going to inconvenience you to considerably, you can do tayammum at work if you're struggling. That's my understanding. In many places in Morocco today, you will see most of the masjids, I'm using Morocco as an example, they all have a tayammum stone in there. And you will see people like that are slightly old, not even that old, that will come in just because, like, when it comes to washing the feet, they kind of struggle a bit. So they just go in and do tayammum and pray. And that's actually quite common. So, okay, I hope I've answered most of that. Let's take some other questions, people. Let's go for some rapid rounds. Last 10 minutes, shall we say. Barn Eddie is saying, what's the topic of today? Any and all, it's a free-for-all. How are you going to find stones and rocks in your office? Musa al-Ash'ari, you're killing it. Yeah, of course you're not going to... But you can carry a little pebble, you can carry a little stone, you can carry a gemstone, that's a good one. Right, so... unless you're working in a cave, you go, don't worry, I will just... Islamic will or final testament. What do you mean by that, Imran Khan? You can put one in a bag. Yeah, you can carry a small, little, nice, shiny pebble. You can carry that. And some people have this understanding that it has to be a big rock. Only big rock, Tayammum. I only do big rock, Tayammum. I think, look, that's just stipulating without any... There's nothing in the Quran or Sunnah that says it must be a big rock. Although many fuqaha have said so. So, friends, nails as they are dead. Friends, nails. I don't know what that is. Right, okay, the walls are stone. The walls, because because in an office or at home, or usually, they will be painted and stuff like this, so you won't have direct contact with something natural. So you'd be more dealing with the paint and stuff like this. Free will, what's my thought on free will and destiny? I've answered before that I believe we have choice. Although our choice may be limited in this world, but we do have choice. And the best way to understand this is like a game that's been pre-designed, but every option, now you can't change the game, but where you get to in the game is up to you as a player. I think that is a pretty good answer for that. Right, so what are some questions? What would be weird to get caught with a stone in a suit pocket if searched by the 5-0 by the cops? No, not if it's a pebble. I mean, I'm not saying carry a rock. It's like you got this big rock, and you're like, right, okay, I can explain, officer. He's like, please do. You're like, well, this is actually for worship. No, I'm not a pagan. I can explain that part too. So, right. So this is, I think, look, you can keep a small, tiny pebble somewhere. I'm sure the cops won't be, cops won't be like, what the hell is this pebble doing in your pocket? There's police brutality. The cop goes, oh, get him in a headlock. Get him. Taser this good for nothing. Right, so what is meant by Allah placing a seal on hearts? Zak Mustafa. Right, so Allah mentions that there is a seal on the hearts of certain people. But this, this seal on the hearts is to do with Allah addressing those people in His time, in the time of the Prophet. Not in Allah's time, in the Prophet's time, who knew the message. And this is why certain people, and I was just coming across certain people like Imam Nawawi in his commentary on Sahih al-Bukhari highlights that the Ahlul Kitab of the Prophet's time were certain that they were awaiting Messiah, and and the Prophet was completely in line with that description they were awaiting. But they rejected him out of arrogance and stubbornness, not out of the fact that they didn't believe him to be true. And it was that was Imam Nawawi addresses was kufr. That arrogance of knowing truth and rejecting it. Just, I ain't going to accept that from you, even though you know it's true. And it's that Allah mentions, that, He has sealed, that khatam Allahu ala qulubihim wa ala absarihim. Allah has sealed their eyes and truth, and their hearts. Meaning it's symbolic and metaphorical in a sense of saying that this is their choice and their fate is sealed by themselves. But Allah has then, basically, if that's their choice, then Allah has sealed their hearts. That's a kind of literary expression of, I'm using to explain that. What's your opinion on uneven haircuts? Really? Are we going to still be asking this? That is so dumb. How did you come back alive? Jon Snow from the Game of Thrones. Allah, Allah, Allah. Wear masah socks, then do it. Yeah, I mean, but, you know, Right, let's take a few rapid round questions, then we'll wrap this up, people. Anything here? Nope. Just go back into that Facebook. The Malaika never disobey God. Is this due to them having an innate incapability to sin? Or is it circumstantial rigidity which prevents any opportunity for them to sin? No, my understanding is the Malaika is not angels, are not something we can fathom, but they are not beings like us in that sense. I don't assume that they are beings of that kind of free choice. That's not the impression that is given in the Quran. That it mentions there are certain beings of light. Some imagery in a small part is used, but generally it's quite vague. Allah dismisses the notion that the Arabs had, that the angels were the daughters of God. He dismisses that and condemns it, but he mentions angels, but not what they are. How are they ontologically as a being? We have no idea. So I would just leave it as that. Disgraceful, and you have Krillin as profile picture, which is even, I don't know what that's even on about. I don't understand why you laughed at the question. There's a narration about the Prophet, and then I can't see any more. Do we need an Islamic will? We don't need an Islamic will, but it's good to have a will in place. Because otherwise, I think, is it 40% goes to the tax man, or how does it work? Tax, huh? I don't understand. Was it Einstein who said that one of the things that is totally unfathomable is income tax? Right. How much would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Well, Omar Tawfiq, you're doing it. Right, so let's take a few last questions, people, and then we'll bring this to an end. What's going on? Importance of Islamic will here as well. Ya salam. Difference between hadith and sunnah of the Prophet. I've mentioned this before, and I do have a video on YouTube. That sunnah is the practice and the teachings of the Prophet. Hadith is a documentation by somebody who could have got it right or could have got it wrong. So yes, many sunnah are found in hadith, but not every hadith necessarily was a sunnah. And not every sunnah was necessarily documented as a hadith. A good example is, for a sunnah, is the way the Prophet prayed with his hands at the side, as the Maliki and other groups do as well. I mean, the Maliki do have other positions as well, but as do many of the Shia or the, I think some of the Ibadiyya and other people, they prayed like that. And that was the position of many Sahaba and Tabi'een, including Imam al-Awza'i, Hassan al-Basri, there's people, I mean, Ibn Sirin, people, Urwat ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Sa'id ibn Jubayr, Sa'id ibn Musayyib, Imam Malik, Layth ibn Sa'ad. All these people had a, they would pray with sadl, the hanging of the arms at the side. Now, you won't really find any hadith clearly teaching that. But it was a sunnah that was established, that was there, and it demonstrates this difference. Now, and on the same token, you will find many hadith that were not a sunnah, definitely. I mean, either they were fake, or they were wrong, or they were misinterpreted, or they were... A good example, which I mentioned in my war wager hadith paradox, that the Prophet said, I've been commanded to fight people. and it is only until they accept what and believe in me and what I've come with, only then will their lives be saved from me and their wealth. Now that hadith is definitely, I don't think anybody accepts that hadith to be a sunnah, but I would say that hadith is actually completely wrong, unacceptable, and either fabricated or misinterpreted along the way. So that's an example, and Imam Malik was one of the key representatives of this distinction. Right, Salim, whoever you are, you need to chill. Right, otherwise, if you're trolling, you're gonna get blocked. Okay, right now. Yeah, so and Imam Abu Hanifa as well. So they made a key distinction between sunnah and hadith. Is cryptocurrency halal? Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. Somebody's asking McGregor or Khabib. You know, I'm not really too much into sports apart from going to the gym myself, and yeah, whatever. What's ridiculous is I saw some posts where people saying because Khabib guy is a Muslim, anybody who's supporting McGregor, you know, better not be friends with me or unfriend me or this, and yeah, this just shows the kind of mentally and the kind of socially handicapped view that certain this was actually certain Muslims seriously saying this kind of stuff. How dumb can you get? You couldn't get any. I mean, you couldn't be more stupid. There's just no other depth of stupidity to go to. It's so. Can we buy houses through banks in the West? Of course you can, and I've got a whole detailed lecture on that if you YouTube it, on loans, mortgages, and riba. Coming to the US anytime soon, maybe in the future, inshallah. Nothing imminently planned, but let's see. How much do you bench and squat? Never enough. Always need to do more. That's the story of my life. What is the history of Abu Huraira and how did he come to relate so many hadith? I've gone over that in the past. Must have been mad hater. What's your availability in Jan? Well, message and let's see what the availability is. Supporting McGregor is Kufr al-Akbar. Well, I mean, I'm not really into sports like that, so I couldn't really care less. But I do think that trying to Islamize things is ridiculous. Islam's got nothing to do with this kind of stuff, and we're not a tribe. We need to get out of this tribalistic mentality that we are a tribe. Oh, everybody Muslim, anybody Muslim, you're not allowed to say anything, a tribe. No, and then the irony is, there's this dumb, handicapped tribalism, and then on the other hand, we hate Muslims. That's the irony, that we hate Muslims so much. Like every other Muslim is a deviant, kafir, kafir. It's like Maulana Tariq Jamil Saab said, he's got this recent clip, I'll share it actually. He said, something like, Wahhabi kehte hain Shia kafir hai, Shia kehte hain Wahhabi kafir hai. He goes, Deobandi kehte hain Barelvi kafir hai, Barelvi kehte hain Deobandi kafir hai. Sunni kehte hain, he goes, Qadiani kafir hai, Qadiani kehte hain Sunni kafir hai. And he goes, like basically everybody's just calling each other kafir. He goes, yaar jannat mein kaun jayega? Who is going to end up in heaven? It's going to be a pretty vacant place. all those coming back to the beginning of the discussion, all those hoors in Jannah, all those women in Jannah, they're just going to be like, So it's a no-show, I guess. Well, this is what I'm talking about. This is how dumb it gets. The people of the cave in the Quran, I've got a video on that. No wonder it's 72 to 1 ratio. 72. Amongst the Ubandi Sheikh Nota is beautiful for uniting a lot of people. Absolutely, I agree. Maulana Tariq Jamil, Sheikh Akram Nadwi, Mufti Rafi Saab, even I believe Maulana Asad as well, I believe from the Brilvis, has tried as well recently quite hard. Saeed Asad, Maulana Saeed Asad from Pakistan has tried as well, and I think people are trying, but it's hard because there's too much hate out there. Missing 3 consecutive Jummahs. I mean, these things were designed to create an emphasis. It doesn't mean you're a hypocrite per se. Okay. Right, okay guys, last 1-2 questions. Need a keeper for 11s. I don't even know what that means. Did the Prophet ask for more days with his more beautiful wife? What does that mean? Oh, right. No, that's not true. What had happened was the Prophet, you see, look, the Prophet was, to us, the Prophet was a human being, and to us he was the best of human beings. And that is so beautifully expressed in the Qasidatul Burda, where it says that وَمَبْلَغُ الْقَوْلِ فِيهِ أَنَّهُ بَشَرٌ. And you know, the pinnacle of what you can say is that he was a human. وَأَنَّهُ خَيْرُ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ كُلِّهِمْ. And yet he was the best of humans and of creation. Now, you see, the Prophet lived with people in an exemplary manner as a human being. He had relationships, he had he was married, he had, you know, he had children, he traded, he did these things. And in relationships you will have ups and downs, you know, you will sometimes, and that's just the human part of nature of relationships. I mean, sometimes people can be bad people, but sometimes you can both be very reasonable people, and just for some reason, you know, there's incompatibility, it's not working out. So what had happened was, in one of the narrations, one of the Prophet's wives, Sauda, she and the Prophet, the relationship wasn't really working out. I mean, they'd been married for a while, and the relationship wasn't working out. And in the Arab culture, as still is today in some parts of the world, like Mauritania, but in the Arab culture back then, divorce was not a taboo at all. So divorcing somebody was not an issue at all, and remarriages were not an issue. There wasn't this thing of, oh, I won't marry a divorcee and stuff like that. In fact, even today in Mauritania, a woman who is divorced has a greater appeal for marriage, believe it or not. That's a very strict Muslim society. So women actually in that society kind of look down at women that have never been divorced. They kind of, oh, they've only been divorced once. They think, huh? Only one? This is true. It's in Mauritania today, and you know, and they're very strict traditional Muslims. So, but back then, I'm just trying to give you some frame of reference. I'm not saying it was like that. But back then, divorcing was not a taboo. So the relationship was on bad terms, or not bad terms, but it was on terms that were, it had kind of was kind of running its course. And so the Prophet spoke with Sauda about, look, maybe we should just kind of leave this relationship and go our own ways. And she said, look, I really don't have an interest in remarrying. Okay. She said, I don't have, like, so for example, you know how women generally in their society, there was no issue in remarrying, and because she was quite elderly as it was. And she said, look, I don't really have no interest in, like, if I leave you, marrying another man. I don't really have any, you know, like, I've reached that stage. She was quite elderly, like I mentioned. I think at the time she may have been almost 60 years of age or something, or in her late 50s. And she said, look, I don't have any interest like that. And I don't really, how about, she said, as a proposal to the Prophet, we could end it, but rather than ending it, how about, for example, we don't really, she said, I don't really have any intimacy needs either. I just go about doing my thing. And it does help being married, especially in a patriarchal society. And naturally in those societies, the husband always took care, especially financially and things like that, of the women. Now, she said, what if we just kept it, but it was at a minimal? So she said, look, I don't have intimacy needs. I don't have these kind of, not really looking to remarry. We could just keep this relationship at a minimal level. So you're not obliged, you're not obligated to stay with me every so often. You're not obligated, you have your freedom. And the Prophet said, okay. And so she remained a wife of the Prophet. And so the Prophet, and that was a minimal relationship they had. So that, and that's what the person is referring to. So the Prophet wouldn't, and she actually suggested in that hadith, she said, look, what about, I know one day a week you come stay with me. What about if you stay with Aisha that day as well? Like, I like my free space, I like my freedom, but we just stay in this minimal relationship. So that was the incident of the divorce discussion with Sauda radiallahu anha. Cool, people. What's mut'ah? I've spoken about that in the past. Ibrahim, stop trolling. How do we differentiate between figurative and literal warnings? Well, we look at the greater context and we use our own reasoning as well. When you upload part 6, I thought it was uploaded. I don't know. I'm going to have to look for that. Did the Prophet ever eat beef? I think hadith reference. I mean, I don't have a reference to hand, like something like that, but I would have assumed that generally the Prophet definitely ate meat. So goat meat, sheep, camel meat, these things were common. The Arabs generally didn't, I don't think cows were a great, I think there definitely was a presence of cows in Arabia, but I don't think it was their main kind of thing. I could be wrong, but I don't think it was a main thing that they resorted to, and hence generally the Arabs not eating so much meat may be down to, or like beef, may be down to that, as in just the availability of beef for them. And hence you get certain hadith that showing that the Arabs weren't a people of generally speaking, of agriculture. And a lot of them were warring tribes, and they had some agriculture, but they weren't heavily invested in agriculture. So that's interesting. But I'm not saying they were definitely cows and oxen and bulls and all these things were present, but to what, relatively speaking, on what scale? The way they had camels present and they had goats and sheep present, were cows of a similar proportion? I believe they weren't, but I could be, I mean, some research on that would be interesting. Mufti Saab, have you done Hajj? I haven't. I've done Umrah, but not Hajj. Distance you travel to shorten the prayer in the Maliki Madhhab. I would say anything that comes off. The general understanding in the Maliki Madhhab is there's a difference of opinion. Some say something like 48 miles, 40-something miles. Some have said 46, some have said 36, some have said 40. Like, there is a difference. People popularly go with 48 miles. What I would say is anything that constitutes a journey. Even if it's 30 miles, if you feel that socially you would say this, I went, like that is a journey, like I travelled out there, then you can shorten the prayer. That's my understanding. Right, people, let's wrap this up. Aisha versus Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu on women's rights. I mean, generally it's, I would say almost certainly that Aisha radiallahu anha is an emblem and a symbol of rights for women, right from the onset. That is, I mean, she is there, she is categorically highlighting the importance. She's also calling out where she sees any form of misogyny. So when she sees the hadith, and I've said that in my previous, I've got it on YouTube as a clip, where she hears the hadith of a woman, the prayer is broken if a woman walks in front of you, and she rebukes and condemns that narration, saying that this is utterly so misunderstood. Right, guys, so let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up. I think, as always, look at that, the drink. Allah, Allah, Allah. Right, till next week, guys. If you've got any questions, do reach out to me. do reach out to me. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. I'm on all of these things. As always, it's Mufti Abu Layth, Al-Maliki, Malm 2014 on Snapchat, MALM2014. Right, and with that, as always, in the words of Mir, अब तो जाते हैं बुत कदे से मीर, फिर मिलेंगे गर खुदा लाया. So let us leave this place of idol worship for now. And we shall surely return to it with the condition that God brings us. Allah, Allah. So with those words, people, have an awesome week. Take very good care of yourselves, inshallah. Much love, till next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.